My son looked me straight in the eye and said, "Mom, you're too old to handle this alone. Let me take care of everything." I was so touched by his kindness that I handed over my entire life to him. That was the biggest mistake I ever made. By the time I discovered what he was really doing, he'd already stolen over $200,000 from me and was 3 weeks away from taking my house. I'm Rebecca Thompson, and I'm 58 years old. 6 months ago, I thought I knew my family. I thought I understood who my children were, what they valued, and how much they loved me. I was wrong about everything. What I'm about to tell you will shake you to your core because it's a story about betrayal so deep, so calculated, that it took me months to accept it was real. For 32 years, I believed I was raising a son who would grow up to be a good man. Tyler was my firstborn, the child who made me a mother, the little boy who used to crawl into my lap and tell me I was the best mom in the world. He had my husband David's charm and intelligence, but somewhere along the way, something went terribly wrong. I just didn't see it until it was almost too late. You see, Tyler had always been what people call a golden child. From the time he was small, everything came easily to him. He was handsome, charismatic, and incredibly persuasive. Teachers loved him, friends flocked to him, and David spoiled him relentlessly. If Tyler wanted something, David made sure he got it. A new bike, expensive sneakers, the latest video games. Nothing was too good for our son. I used to worry sometimes that we were giving him too much, but David would say, "Rebecca, we work hard so our kids can have better lives than we did. What's the point of success if we can't share it with our children?" Looking back now, I realize we weren't just giving Tyler material things. We were teaching him that he was entitled to whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted it. Our daughter Ashley was different. 3 years younger than Tyler, she was independent from an early age. While Tyler expected everything to be handed to him, Ashley worked for what she wanted. She had paper routes, babysat the neighbors' kids, and saved every penny for things that mattered to her. When it came time for college, Tyler assumed we'd pay for everything, while Ashley applied for scholarships and took out student loans because she didn't want to burden us financially. The contrast between my children should have been a warning sign, but I was too busy making excuses for Tyler's behavior. When he got fired from jobs, I told people he was between opportunities. When he borrowed money and didn't pay it back, I convinced myself he was just going through a rough patch. When he only called when he needed something, I told myself he was busy building his career. David and I had been married for 35 years when the cancer diagnosis came. Pancreatic cancer, one of the most aggressive and deadly forms. The doctors gave him 2 years if we were lucky, and they were right almost to the day. Those 2 years changed everything about our lives, our finances, and our family dynamics. The medical bills started immediately. Even with insurance, the experimental treatments, the specialists, the medications that weren't fully covered, it all added up faster than I could have imagined. David had been the family breadwinner, working as an electrical engineer for a manufacturing company. I taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school, a job I loved, but that didn't pay much. Together we'd built a comfortable middle-class life, but comfortable doesn't prepare you for catastrophic illness. During David's illness, Tyler's behavior became even more concerning. He'd visit occasionally, but always seemed distracted, always checking his phone or making excuses to leave early. He never offered to help with medical appointments or managing David's care. Meanwhile, Ashley flew in from Seattle every few weeks, taking vacation days to help coordinate treatments and provide emotional support. I remember one particularly difficult day when David was in the hospital after a bad reaction to chemotherapy. I'd been there for 18 hours straight, and I was exhausted and scared. Ashley was flying in the next morning, but I needed help that night. I called Tyler, who lived only 20 minutes away. "Mom, I wish I could help, "But I've got this really important client meeting tomorrow morning," he said. "You know how it is in real estate. If I don't close this deal, I won't make my commission this month." I hung up feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. My husband was fighting for his life, and my son was worried about a commission check. That night, I sat in that sterile hospital room holding David's hand while he slept, and I wondered where I'd gone wrong as a mother. But then David died, and everything changed. The funeral was on a Tuesday in March. The whole community turned out. David's co-workers, my fellow teachers, neighbors we'd known for decades, parents of students I'd taught over the years. It was beautiful and heartbreaking, and I felt overwhelmed by the love and support surrounding us. That's when Tyler surprised me. 3 days after the funeral, he showed up at my house with groceries and flowers. He sat with me at the kitchen table and said those words that would haunt me for months. "Mom, you're too old to handle this alone. Let me take care of everything." I started crying right there at the table, not just because I was grieving David, but because I felt like I finally had my son back, the son I'd always hoped he could be, the man I'd always believed he was underneath the selfishness and entitlement. "I know I haven't been the best son," he said, reaching across the table to take my hands. "I know I wasn't there enough when Dad was sick, but I want to make that right. I want to honor his memory by taking care of you the way he would have wanted." It was exactly what I needed to hear. In my grief and exhaustion, those words felt like a lifeline. Finally, I thought, tragedy had taught my son what really mattered. Finally, he was going to step up and be the man I'd always known he could be. I had no idea that this moment of apparent transformation was actually the beginning of the most calculated betrayal I could ever imagine. I had no idea that Tyler had been planning this conversation, these words, this entire approach for months before David even died. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Right now, sitting in my kitchen 3 days after burying my husband, I felt nothing but gratitude and relief. My son was going to take care of me. Everything was going to be okay. That was my first mistake, and it definitely wouldn't be my last. The weeks following David's funeral passed in a blur of paperwork, condolence calls, and the overwhelming silence of a house that had been filled with love and laughter for 25 years. Our colonial home in Westerville, Ohio, suddenly felt enormous and empty. Every room held memories, David's coffee mug still sitting on his nightstand, his reading glasses on the kitchen counter, his favorite chair in the living room that I couldn't bring myself to sit in. I'd been an elementary school teacher for over 20 years, but I'd taken a leave of absence during David's final months to care for him. Now, facing the reality of returning to work while managing everything else, I felt completely overwhelmed. David had always handled our finances, the investments, insurance policies, mortgage payments, tax preparations. He'd tried to explain things to me over the years, but I'd always been too busy with my own responsibilities to pay close attention. "Don't worry about it, honey," he'd say. "I've got it all under control." Now, sitting at our kitchen table surrounded by stacks of papers I didn't understand, I realized how unprepared I was for this reality. There were insurance claims to file, benefits to apply for, accounts to transfer, and legal documents that might as well have been written in a foreign language. The life insurance policy would help, but it would take months to process. In the meantime, I was drowning in medical bills and struggling to keep up with basic household expenses on my teacher's salary. That's when Tyler's transformation became most apparent. For the first time in years, he started visiting regularly, not just quick obligatory stops, but real visits where he'd stay for hours, helping me sort through paperwork and making sense of our financial situation. He'd arrive with dinner from my favorite restaurant, flowers for the kitchen table, and an endless supply of patience for my questions. "Mom, don't worry about understanding all this right now," he'd say, gently taking a stack of insurance forms from my trembling hands. "You're still grieving. Let me handle the complicated stuff while you focus on healing." The relief I felt was indescribable. Here was my son, finally stepping up, finally showing the maturity and compassion I'd always hoped he possessed. When friends from school asked how I was managing, I'd tell them proudly about Tyler's newfound attentiveness. "I always knew he had it in him," I'd say. "Sometimes it just takes a tragedy to bring out the best in people." Tyler's wife, Jessica, seemed supportive of his new role in my life. She'd often come with him to visit, bringing homemade cookies or offering to help with housework. "I'm so glad Tyler's finally stepping up," she told me one afternoon while we folded laundry together. "I've been telling him for years that family should come first." Even Tyler's approach to his job seemed to change. He'd been working in real estate for about 8 years, but he'd always struck me as more interested in the quick sale than in really helping his clients. Now he started talking about his work differently, about helping families find their dream homes, about the responsibility he felt toward his clients' major life decisions. Dad's death really put things in perspective for me, he told me one evening as we sat on the back porch where David and I used to have our coffee every morning. "Life's too short to spend it chasing money instead of taking care of the people who matter most." I remember feeling so proud of him in that moment. This was the son I'd always envisioned, thoughtful, caring, responsible. The son who would honor his father's memory by protecting and caring for his mother. Ashley called from Seattle every few days, and I could hear the relief in her voice when I told her about Tyler's help. "I'm so glad he's stepping up, Mom," she said during one of our conversations. "I was worried about you being all alone out there, especially with all the financial stuff you're dealing with." "Your brother's been wonderful," I told her. "I think losing Dad really changed him. He's become the man we always knew he could be." Ashley had offered to move back to Ohio to help, but Tyler had been quick to discourage that idea. "Ashley has her own life and family to think about," he'd tell me. "Besides, I'm right here. There's no need to uproot her entire life when I can handle everything." At the time, his reasoning made perfect sense. Ashley did have a good job and a family in Seattle. Why should she sacrifice her career and disrupt her children's lives when Tyler was available and willing to help? I appreciated that he seemed to be thinking about his sister's well-being, not just his own convenience. The most touching moment came about 6 weeks after David's death. I'd been having a particularly difficult day, overwhelmed by a stack of medical bills and feeling lost without David's guidance. I'd called Tyler in tears, barely able to explain what was wrong. He showed up at my door within an hour, took one look at the papers scattered across my dining room table and said, "Mom, pack a bag. You're coming to stay with Jessica and me for a few weeks." "Oh, Tyler, I couldn't impose like that," I protested. "You're not imposing," he said firmly. "You're my mother, and you need support right now. Dad would never forgive me if I let you struggle through this alone." I stayed with Tyler and Jessica for 3 weeks, and it was exactly what I needed. Jessica made my favorite breakfast every morning. Tyler handled all the phone calls with insurance companies and lawyers, and for the first time since David's death, I felt like I could breathe again. They gave me their guest room, and Jessica even bought new sheets and towels in my favorite colors to make me feel at home. During those weeks, Tyler took complete control of organizing my finances. He set up a filing system, created spreadsheets to track everything, and handled all the communications with various agencies and institutions. When I tried to ask questions or get involved, he'd gently discourage me. "Mom, you've been through enough," he'd say. "Let me handle the business side of things while you focus on taking care of yourself. That's what Dad would have wanted." It seemed so reasonable, so caring. Tyler was protecting me from additional stress during the most difficult period of my life. He was being the strong, responsible son that every mother hopes for. When I finally moved back to my own house, Tyler had everything organized in neat folders with clear labels. All the important documents were in one place, all the bills were up to date, and he'd even set up automatic payments for utilities and other regular expenses. "I've simplified everything for you," he explained, showing me the system he'd created. "But don't worry about remembering all the details. I'll keep track of everything and make sure nothing falls through the cracks." I felt so grateful, so blessed to have a son who cared enough to take such good care of me. When my sister called from Arizona to check on me, I couldn't stop talking about Tyler's transformation. "It's like David's death flipped a switch in him," I told her. "He's become this incredibly responsible, caring man almost overnight. I think he finally understands what really matters in life." My sister seemed pleased but cautious. "That's wonderful, Rebecca," she said. "Just make sure you stay involved in your own affairs. Don't let anyone, even Tyler, take over completely." At the time, her words seemed unnecessarily suspicious. Tyler wasn't taking over. He was helping. He was being the devoted son I'd always hoped he could be. The idea that his motives might be anything other than pure love and concern never crossed my mind. Looking back now, I can see how naive I was, how desperately I wanted to believe that tragedy had transformed my son into the man I'd always dreamed he could be. I wanted so badly for something good to come out of David's death, for our family to be brought closer together by our shared loss. I had no idea that Tyler's newfound attentiveness was actually the opening move in a carefully planned strategy to gain complete control over my life and finances. I had no idea that every kind gesture, every helpful act, every expression of concern was calculated to build my trust and dependence on him. All I knew was that for the first time since David's death, I felt like I wasn't facing the future alone. My son was taking care of me, just like he'd promised. Everything was going to be okay. I couldn't have been more wrong. 3 months into what I thought was Tyler's miraculous transformation, the first crack in my perfect picture appeared on a Tuesday morning when I went to check my mailbox. It was empty, which seemed odd because I was expecting my monthly bank statement and a few other pieces of mail that usually arrived around that time. I called the post office, thinking maybe there was a delivery issue. The postal worker I spoke with seemed confused when I explained the situation. "Ma'am, according to our records, you've set up mail forwarding to an address on Maple Ridge Drive," she said. "All your mail has been going there since about 6 weeks ago." My heart skipped a beat. Maple Ridge Drive was Tyler's street. "I never set up any mail forwarding," I told her, my voice starting to shake. "Well, someone did. We have the paperwork right here with your signature on it." When I hung up the phone, my hands were trembling. I tried to think of a reasonable explanation. Maybe Tyler had set it up temporarily while I was staying with them, just to make sure nothing important got lost. But that was 6 weeks ago, and I'd been back home for 3 weeks. Why was my mail still going to his house? I called Tyler immediately. "Honey, I just found out my mail is being forwarded to your house. Do you know anything about that?" "Oh yeah, Mom," he said casually, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "I set that up while you were staying with us. With everything you were dealing with, I wanted to make sure nothing important got lost or forgotten. You know how mail can pile up when you're not paying attention." "But I've been home for 3 weeks," I said. "Shouldn't we change it back?" "We probably should," he agreed. "But honestly, it's been really helpful having everything come here first. I can sort through it, handle the bills and official stuff, and just bring you the personal letters and things you actually need to see. It saves you from having to deal with all the stressful financial paperwork." His explanation made sense, I supposed. I had been overwhelmed by paperwork, and Tyler had been handling most of the financial communications anyway. but something about it felt wrong, like a small violation of my independence that I couldn't quite articulate. I think I'd prefer to have my mail come to my own house, I said carefully. Of course, Mom, whatever makes you comfortable. I'll take care of it this week. But the week passed, and my mail was still going to Tyler's house. When I asked about it, again, he said he'd forgotten but would definitely handle it soon. Another week went by, then another. Each time I brought it up, Tyler had a reasonable excuse. He'd been busy with work, the post office had been understaffed, he'd filled out the wrong form, and had to start over. Meanwhile, other strange things started happening. My financial advisor, Mr. Patterson, called one afternoon asking about changes to my investment accounts. Mrs. Thompson, I just wanted to confirm these modifications to your portfolio allocation, he said. The paperwork came through last week, but some of these changes seem unusual given our previous conversations about your risk tolerance. I had no idea what he was talking about. What changes? I haven't made any changes to my investments. Well, according to the documentation we received, you're moving a significant portion of your assets into different funds, and you've also updated your beneficiary information and authorized a new person to make decisions on your account. My stomach dropped. What new person? Your son, Tyler Thompson. He's now listed as having power of attorney over this account. I was holding the phone so tightly my knuckles were white. Mr. Patterson, I never authorized any of those changes. I never signed anything about Tyler having power of attorney. There was a long pause. Mrs. Thompson, I have the signed documents right here. Would you like to come in so we can review them together? Before I could answer, I heard Tyler's voice in the background. He'd apparently been listening on another extension. Mr. Patterson, this is Tyler Thompson. I'm right here with my mother, and she's been having some memory issues since my father's death. Grief can really affect cognitive function, as I'm sure you understand. Mom, you signed those papers last week when we were organizing your finances, remember? I felt like the world was tilting. Had I signed those papers? The past few months were such a blur of documents and forms and legal jargon. Maybe I had signed something and forgotten about it. Grief really did affect memory. Everyone said so. Maybe Tyler was right. I'll handle this, Mr. Patterson, Tyler continued smoothly. My mother's been under a lot of stress, and I think she's just confused about the timeline. These changes were definitely discussed and authorized. When Tyler hung up, he turned to me with that patient, caring expression I'd grown so used to. Mom, you're being too hard on yourself. You've been through a trauma. It's completely normal to feel confused about things you've signed or decisions you've made. That's exactly why I'm here to help you. But I didn't feel confused. I felt like something was being taken away from me, like my own life was slipping out of my control. I tried to express this to Tyler, but he was so gentle, so understanding, that I ended up feeling guilty for questioning him. I just want to make sure I understand what's happening with my own money, I said. Of course you do, Tyler replied. And I want you to understand everything too. But right now, while you're still grieving and adjusting, maybe it's better if I handle the complicated financial stuff. That way you can focus on healing and getting back to teaching. Dad would want me to protect you from unnecessary stress. The mention of David always stopped my questions. Tyler was right. David would want me to be protected from stress. And Tyler was just trying to help. So why did I feel so uneasy? The feeling got worse when Ashley called a few days later. Mom, you sounded really confused last time we talked about your finances, she said. I'm worried about you. Maybe I should come visit and help you get organized. Before I could answer, Tyler, who happened to be visiting, took the phone from me. Ashley, it's Tyler. Mom's fine, just a little overwhelmed. I've got everything under control here. You don't need to worry or disrupt your life to come out here. I could hear Ashley's voice rising on the other end of the line, but Tyler moved into the other room to continue the conversation. When he came back, he looked frustrated. Ashley doesn't understand the situation, he told me. She thinks she needs to fly out here and take charge, but honestly, Mom, that would just make things more complicated. She doesn't know your finances the way I do now, and having too many people involved in decisions just creates confusion. Part of me wanted to talk to Ashley myself, to hear what she thought about everything that was happening, but Tyler seemed so certain that involving her would be problematic, and I didn't want to cause family conflict during an already difficult time. Over the following weeks, Tyler's presence in my life became even more pervasive. He started accompanying me to every appointment, doctor visits, meetings with lawyers, sessions with the insurance company. At first I appreciated the support, but gradually I realized he was doing most of the talking. My mother's been having a difficult time since my father's death, he'd tell whoever we were meeting with. I'm helping her manage her affairs during this transition period. When I tried to ask questions or express my own preferences, Tyler would jump in with explanations. What my mother means is, or, she's still processing the grief, so let me clarify what she's really concerned about. I started to feel invisible in my own life. People would look to Tyler for answers about my situation, my needs, my decisions. Even my own doctor started addressing Tyler instead of me during appointments. Your mother should consider this medication for her anxiety, Dr. Williams said during one visit, handing the prescription to Tyler instead of me. I'm not anxious, I said. I'm just sad. There's a difference. Dr. Williams looked confused, glancing between Tyler and me. Tyler smiled that patient smile and said, Mom, you've been having trouble sleeping, and you've told me how worried you are about managing everything. That's anxiety, even if it doesn't feel like it to you. Had I told him I was worried? I supposed I had mentioned feeling overwhelmed sometimes, but I didn't want medication for anxiety. I wanted to feel my grief, to process it naturally. But somehow we left that appointment with a prescription I didn't want, and Tyler promised to make sure I took it regularly. The most disturbing incident happened during a meeting with David's estate lawyer. I'd gone there to finalize some aspects of probate, but when we arrived, Tyler immediately launched into a discussion about updating my will and establishing new powers of attorney. My mother wants to make sure everything is organized in case anything happens to her, Tyler explained to the lawyer. She's particularly concerned about making sure her affairs won't be a burden on the family. I stared at him. I'd never said anything about updating my will or being a burden on anyone. Tyler, I don't think... Mom, he interrupted gently. We talked about this last week, remember? You said you wanted to make sure Ashley wouldn't have to deal with the kind of complicated financial mess we had to handle after Dad died. The lawyer was already pulling out forms. It's very wise to plan ahead, Mrs. Thompson. Many people put off these important decisions until it's too late. I felt trapped. Tyler was presenting this as something I'd requested, and the lawyer was treating it as a routine matter. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe this was normal, responsible planning. Maybe my grief really was affecting my memory more than I realized. But as I sat there, watching Tyler discuss the details of my own will and financial arrangements as if I wasn't even in the room, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Something was very wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what it was. When we left that appointment, Tyler had collected yet another set of documents for safekeeping at his house. My own important papers were disappearing from my life, one meeting at a time. That night, I called Ashley back, but Tyler answered my phone. Mom's resting, he told her. She had a really difficult day dealing with legal stuff. Maybe you could call back tomorrow. I was sitting right there, wide awake, wanting desperately to talk to my daughter. But Tyler had already hung up, and when I asked why he'd answered my phone, he looked genuinely confused. It was ringing, and you seemed so tired. I was just trying to help. Always helping. Always protecting me. Always making decisions for my own good. But why did it feel less like help and more like I was disappearing from my own life? The breaking point came on a Thursday in late September, exactly 6 months after David's funeral. I'd been feeling increasingly uncomfortable about the way Tyler was managing my life, but I kept telling myself I was being ungrateful. After all, he was helping me during the most difficult period of my life. What kind of mother questions her son's motives when he's sacrificing his time to care for her? But that Thursday morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. Maybe it was because I'd finally gotten a full night's sleep without the anxiety medication Tyler insisted I needed. Maybe it was because Ashley had managed to call me directly the night before while Tyler was out, and hearing her voice had reminded me of who I used to be before I became this confused, dependent version of myself. "Mom, you don't sound like yourself anymore," Ashley had said during our conversation. "You used to be so decisive, so independent. Now every time I talk to you, you seem uncertain about everything. Are you sure you're okay?" Her words had stung because they were true. I had become uncertain about everything. My own memories, my own decisions, even my own feelings. When had I become this person who couldn't make a simple choice without checking with Tyler first? I decided I needed to see my important documents for myself. Not the simplified summaries Tyler had been showing me, but the actual papers. I wanted to understand exactly what changes had been made to my finances and why. I was still a competent adult, and these were my accounts, my investments, my life. I had every right to see the paperwork. Tyler had told me he was keeping everything organized in his home office for safekeeping. "It's much more secure there," he'd explained. "Plus, this way, when we need something for meetings or appointments, I don't have to make an extra trip to your house to pick it up." That Thursday afternoon, I drove to Tyler's house with the intention of collecting my documents and bringing them back home where they belonged. When I rang the doorbell, Jessica answered, looking surprised to see me. "Oh, hi, Rebecca. Tyler's not here. He's showing a house to some clients. Did you need something?" "I just wanted to pick up some of my paperwork from his office," I said. "He's been keeping my important documents there, and I'd like to review them at home." Jessica hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside to let me in. "Of course. You know where his office is. I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything." Tyler's home office was a converted bedroom on the first floor, lined with filing cabinets and dominated by a large desk covered with neat stacks of papers. I'd been in there several times over the past few months, but always with Tyler present, always with him controlling what I saw and explaining what everything meant. Now, alone in the room, I felt like I was seeing it with new eyes. One entire filing cabinet was labeled with my name. An entire filing cabinet. How many documents could there possibly be related to my affairs? I started with the folders on Tyler's desk, and immediately my blood ran cold. There, in the first folder, were bank statements for accounts I didn't recognize. Accounts with my name on them but with balances and transactions I'd never seen before. Large transfers, new account openings, changes to beneficiaries, all dated within the past 6 months. My hands started shaking as I flipped through page after page of financial documents. There were investment account statements showing Tyler as the primary contact and decision maker. There were insurance policy changes I didn't remember making. There were even applications for new credit cards in my name, with the bills going to Tyler's address. But the worst discovery was yet to come. In the bottom drawer of Tyler's desk, I found a leather-bound notebook that made my stomach turn. It was Tyler's handwriting, but the content read like a business plan for destroying my independence. The first entry was dated 8 months ago, while David was still alive but clearly dying. "Dad's condition is deteriorating faster than expected," the entry read. "Mom is already overwhelmed and will be completely lost without him. This is the perfect opportunity to step in and gain control of their assets. She's always been emotional and dependent. Grief will make her even more malleable." I sat down hard in Tyler's chair, feeling like I might throw up. This was dated February. David had died in March. Tyler had been planning this while his father was still fighting for his life. The entries continued with cold, calculated observations about my emotional state and detailed strategies for gaining my trust and dependence. There were notes about gradually isolating me from other family members and friends. There were reminders to be extra attentive and caring to reinforce my gratitude. There were even specific phrases he planned to use to make me feel guilty for questioning his help. Key phrases that work with Mom, one section read. Dad would have wanted me to take care of you. You've been through so much trauma. Grief affects memory and judgment. I'm just trying to protect you from stress. Every single thing Tyler had said to me over the past 6 months was written in this notebook. Every gesture of care, every expression of concern, every moment I'd felt grateful for his transformation. It had all been scripted, planned, manipulated. But the entry that broke my heart completely was near the end. Mom signed the power of attorney documents today without even reading them. She trusts me completely now. The house transfer papers are ready for next week. Once that's complete, I'll have control of everything. Jessica's nervous about the plan, but I reminded her that Mom's getting older and would probably end up in a nursing home eventually anyway. This way, the assets stay in the family instead of being drained by care facilities. The house transfer papers. Tyler was planning to take my house, the home David and I had built our life in, where we'd raised our children, where every room held precious memories. Tyler was going to steal it from me. I fumbled for my phone and started taking pictures of everything, the bank, statements, the insurance changes, the notebook entries, the unsigned transfer documents, all of it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone steady, but I managed to photograph page after page of evidence. The sound of a car door slamming outside made me freeze. Through the office window, I could see Tyler's BMW in the driveway. He was back early from his appointment. I quickly closed all the folders and put them back exactly where I'd found them. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he'd be able to hear it from across the room. I grabbed a random folder from the filing cabinet and was pretending to review it when Tyler walked into the office. "Mom, what a nice surprise," he said. But his eyes immediately went to his desk, scanning to see if anything had been disturbed. "Jessica said you wanted to look at some paperwork?" "Yes," I managed to say, hoping my voice sounded normal. "I just wanted to review my insurance policies. I couldn't remember the details of my coverage." Tyler moved closer, and I could feel him watching me carefully. "Find what you were looking for?" "I think so," I said, closing the folder and standing up. "I should probably get home." "Are you feeling okay? You look a little pale." The concern in his voice, the same gentle, caring tone he'd been using for months, now sounded sinister to my ears. Everything about him looked different now that I knew the truth. The way he positioned himself between me and the door, the way his eyes kept darting to his desk, the calculated nature of every expression that crossed his face. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired." Tyler walked me to my car, chatting normally about his real estate appointment and asking if I needed him to pick up anything from the grocery store for me. The same Tyler who'd been plotting to steal my entire life was offering to buy me groceries. The disconnect was so jarring I felt dizzy. As I drove home, my mind was reeling. Everything I'd believed about the past 6 months was a lie. Tyler hadn't been transformed by grief or motivated by love. He'd been executing a carefully planned scheme to take advantage of my vulnerability and steal everything David and I had worked for our entire lives. The son I thought I'd gotten back had never existed. The caring, responsible man I'd been so proud of was just a performance, and I'd been the perfect audience, grateful, trusting, and completely deceived. But now I knew the truth. And I had the evidence to prove it. The question was, what was I going to do about it? For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not the confused, dependent widow Tyler had been manipulating, but Rebecca Thompson, the woman who'd raised 2 children, managed a classroom full of 8-year-olds for 20 years, and survived her husband's devastating illness with grace and strength. Tyler had underestimated me, and that was going to be his downfall. I was done being a victim. It was time to fight back. I didn't sleep at all that Thursday night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my phone next to me with all those damning photos, my mind racing with the enormity of what I'd discovered. By morning, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to confront Tyler alone. I needed backup, I needed witnesses, and I needed professional help. The first call I made was to Ashley in Seattle. It was 6 a.m. my time, 4 a.m. hers, but I couldn't wait another minute. "Mom, what's wrong?" she answered, immediately alert despite the early hour. "Ashley, I need you to listen very carefully. Everything we thought about Tyler helping me, it's all been a lie. He's been stealing from me, and I have proof." I sent her the photos while we talked, and I could hear her sharp intake of breath as she scrolled through them on her phone. "Oh my God, Mom, this notebook. He's been planning this since before Dad even died. How could he do this? How could he be so calculating?" "I don't know," I said, my voice breaking. "But Ashley, I need your help. He's going to realize I was in his office yesterday, and I think he's going to move fast now. According to his notes, he was planning to have me sign the house transfer papers next week." "I'm booking a flight right now," Ashley said without hesitation. "Don't sign anything. Don't go anywhere alone with him. And whatever you do, don't let him know that you know. Can you do that?" "I think so. But Ashley, what if he's right? What if I am just a confused old woman who can't handle her own affairs? What if no one believes me?" "Mom, stop it," Ashley said firmly. "You found evidence of financial fraud. You took pictures. You figured out his entire scheme. Does that sound like someone who's confused and incompetent? You're the smartest, strongest woman I know. Tyler's been gaslighting you, making you doubt yourself. But I believe you, and we're going to stop him." After hanging up with Ashley, I called the one person I knew who could give me immediate professional guidance. My friend Margaret, who'd retired from teaching the same year I took my leave of absence. Margaret's daughter was an elder law attorney, and Margaret had mentioned once that she specialized in financial abuse cases. "Rebecca, honey, slow down," Margaret said when I called and started explaining everything in a rush. "Take a deep breath and tell me exactly what you found." I walked her through the discovery step by step, and Margaret's silence grew more ominous with each detail I shared. "Rebecca, this is serious criminal behavior," she finally said. "You need to contact my daughter immediately. Her name is Linda Warren, and she's dealt with cases exactly like this. Can you get to her office this morning?" By 10 a.m., I was sitting in Linda Warren's law office, showing her the photos on my phone while she took detailed notes. Linda was about 40, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately put me at ease. "Mrs. Thompson, what your son has done constitutes elder financial abuse, identity theft, and fraud," she said after reviewing all the evidence. "This notebook alone is enough to prove premeditation and intent. But I'm concerned about how quickly he might try to complete the house transfer now that he knows you were in his office." "How could he know I was in his office?" I asked. "Men like your son are very careful about their documents. He probably has them arranged in a specific way, or he might have some kind of security system. Either way, he'll be suspicious. We need to move fast." Linda explained that we needed to file for an emergency restraining order to prevent Tyler from accessing my accounts or making any more changes to my assets. She also wanted to contact the police to file a criminal complaint. "But first," she said, I think we should confront him directly, with witnesses present and everything recorded. Men like Tyler are often so confident in their manipulation that they'll confess when confronted with evidence, especially if they think they can still talk their way out of it. That afternoon, Ashley's flight landed, and by evening, we had our confrontation plan in place. Linda would participate by phone, Ashley would be there in person, and I would record everything on my phone. We arranged to meet at my house, neutral territory where I'd feel most comfortable and confident. I called Tyler that evening and asked him to come over the next day. "I need to discuss some financial decisions with you," I told him, trying to keep my voice steady. "Of course, Mom. I'll be there around noon. Is everything okay? You sound a little stressed." "I'm fine," I lied. "I just want to make sure I understand everything that's been happening with my accounts." Saturday arrived gray and rainy, which seemed fitting for what I knew would be one of the most difficult days of my life. Ashley arrived at my house at 11 a.m., and we spent the last hour before Tyler's arrival going over our plan and setting up the recording equipment. "Remember, Mom," Ashley said, holding my hands, "he's going to try to make you feel guilty, confused, and ungrateful. He's going to use every manipulation tactic he's perfected over the past 6 months. Don't let him get in your head." When Tyler arrived at exactly noon, he seemed slightly surprised to see Ashley there. "Ashley, I didn't know you were flying in," he said, giving her a hug that she barely returned. "Mom didn't mention you were coming." "It was a last-minute decision," Ashley said coolly. "I wanted to be here for this conversation." Tyler's eyes darted between us, and I could see him assessing the situation, trying to figure out what was happening. His salesman instincts were clearly telling him something was off. We all sat in the living room, Tyler on the couch, Ashley and me in chairs facing him. I had my phone recording in my lap, and Linda was standing by on speakerphone, though Tyler didn't know that yet. "Tyler," I began, my voice steadier than I'd expected. "I went to your office yesterday to get some of my documents." His face didn't change, but I saw his hands tighten slightly on his knees. "I know. Jessica told me. Did you find what you were looking for?" "I found more than I was looking for," I said, pulling out printed copies of the photos I'd taken. "I found your notebook." The color drained from Tyler's face, but he recovered quickly. "What notebook? Mom, I'm not sure what you think you found, but—" "Tyler," I interrupted, "I have pictures of everything. The forged power of attorney documents, the house transfer papers, the bank accounts you opened in my name, and most importantly, I have pictures of your notebook where you planned this entire scheme while your father was dying." The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler looked at the papers in my hands, then at Ashley, then back at me. I could literally see him calculating his options, trying to figure out how to spin this situation to his advantage. Finally, his mask slipped completely. The caring, gentle expression he'd worn for 6 months disappeared, replaced by cold anger. "You went through my private papers," he said, his voice hard. "You invaded my privacy and took pictures of confidential documents." "Confidential documents about stealing my money and my house," I shot back, feeling stronger with every word. "Documents about manipulating and defrauding your own mother." Tyler stood up and started pacing. "You think you can handle all this alone? You're falling apart, Mom. You can barely remember what you had for breakfast, let alone manage complex financial decisions. I was doing you a favor." "A favor?" Ashley interjected, her voice sharp with anger. "You call stealing $200,000 and planning to take her house a favor?" Tyler whirled on her. "This doesn't concern you, Ashley. You live 3,000 miles away. You have no idea what I've been dealing with here." "I know exactly what you've been dealing with," Ashley said, standing up to face him. "A grieving widow who trusted you completely, and you saw that trust as an opportunity to rob her blind." Rob her? Tyler laughed bitterly. I've been protecting her assets. At least this way the money stays in the family instead of her giving it all to some charity or getting scammed by strangers. She's not capable of making rational financial decisions anymore. That's not your decision to make, I said, standing up myself. That's my money, my house, my life. You had no right to take control of any of it. Tyler's composure completely cracked. I had every right. Do you have any idea how much time I've wasted taking care of you? How many clients I've lost because I was constantly dealing with your problems? Dad spoiled me my whole life and then left me with the responsibility of cleaning up the mess. The ugliness in his voice was shocking. This wasn't grief or misguided concern. This was pure entitlement and resentment. You've never appreciated anything I've done for this family, he continued, his voice rising. Ashley gets to live her perfect life across the country while I'm stuck dealing with everything here. Well, I decided it was time I got something out of it. Tyler, I said quietly, I thought grief had finally made you into the man I always hoped you could be. But you were never that man, were you? This is who you really are. He stared at me for a long moment, and for just a second, I saw something that might have been shame cross his face, but it was quickly replaced by defiance. You can't prove any of this, he said. Those documents are legal. You signed everything voluntarily, and if you try to claim otherwise, I'll have you declared mentally incompetent. I have months of documented evidence of your confusion and memory problems. That's when Linda's voice came through the speakerphone, clear and authoritative. Mr. Thompson, this is Linda Warren, Mrs. Thompson's attorney. I've been listening to this entire conversation, which is being recorded. You've just confessed to elder financial abuse, fraud, and identity theft. The notebook your mother photographed provides clear evidence of premeditation, and your statements just now constitute a full admission of guilt. Tyler spun around, looking for the phone, his face flushing red with anger and panic. Furthermore, Linda continued, we've already filed for an emergency restraining order preventing you from accessing any of your mother's accounts or assets. The police have been notified, and criminal charges will be filed Monday morning. Tyler looked between Ashley and me, his eyes wild. You can't do this to me. I'm your son. I was trying to help you. You were trying to help yourself, I said sadly. And now you're going to face the consequences. Tyler stormed toward the door, then turned back one last time. You'll regret this. Without me, you'll lose everything anyway. You're too old and too stupid to manage on your own. Maybe, I said calmly. But that's my choice to make, not yours. After he left, slamming the door behind him, I collapsed back into my chair, emotionally drained but strangely relieved. The son I'd thought I'd lost and found again had never existed. But I'd found something more important. I'd found myself again. 8 months have passed since that confrontation in my living room, and I'm sitting in the same chair where I discovered the truth about my son, but everything else in my life has changed completely. The woman who was so easily manipulated, so desperate to believe in Tyler's transformation, feels like a stranger to me now. I've learned things about myself, about family, and about trust that I never wanted to know but needed to understand. The legal battle with Tyler was brutal but swift. Linda Warren had been right. The combination of his notebook planning the scheme, the forged documents, and his recorded confession made the case almost impossible for him to defend. Within 2 weeks of our confrontation, the restraining order was made permanent, and all access to my accounts was restored to me alone. The criminal charges took longer to resolve. Tyler hired an expensive lawyer who tried to argue that he'd been acting in my best interests, that I was mentally incompetent due to grief, and that everything he'd done was to protect family assets. But the prosecutor, a sharp woman named Sarah Chen, systematically destroyed every one of his defenses. The defendant's own written words prove premeditation, she argued in court. He began planning this scheme while his father was still alive, targeting his mother's anticipated vulnerability. This wasn't a son caring for a grieving parent. This was a calculated predator exploiting a victim he knew intimately. The most damaging evidence was Tyler's notebook. Page after page of cold analysis about my emotional state, detailed strategies for gaining my trust, and specific plans for isolating me from other family members. The judge called it one of the most callous examples of elder abuse she'd ever seen. Tyler was ultimately sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution, every penny he'd stolen, plus interest and legal fees. The total came to over $250,000. His real estate license was revoked, and he'll be a convicted felon for the rest of his life. But beyond the legal victory, the real work was rebuilding my sense of self and learning to trust my own judgment again. The first few months after the confrontation were the hardest. I'd wake up every morning questioning every decision I'd made over the past 6 months. Had I really been as confused and incompetent as Tyler claimed? How had I been so blind to his manipulation? What if other people in my life were also taking advantage of me? Ashley took a leave of absence from her job and stayed with me for 6 weeks, helping me sort through the financial mess Tyler had created, and more importantly, helping me remember who I was before grief made me vulnerable. "Mom, you taught 3rd graders for 20 years, she reminded me one particularly difficult day when I was doubting my ability to manage my own finances. You handled classroom discipline, parent conferences, curriculum changes, and budget cuts. You coordinated school fundraisers and managed field trips. You are not an incompetent woman." Slowly, with Ashley's help and Linda's guidance, I began to reclaim control of my life. We closed the accounts Tyler had opened without my knowledge and consolidated everything back into my original banks. We updated all my passwords and security questions. We even had my mail delivery confirmed back to my own address, something Tyler had been promising to fix for months, but never did. The process of going through every document, every change Tyler had made, was like archaeological work. We'd uncover another layer of deception, another forged signature, another unauthorized modification to my accounts. Each discovery was painful, but also liberating, proof that my instincts had been right, that the unease I'd felt hadn't been paranoia or confusion. One of the most shocking discoveries came when we found out Tyler had applied for a home equity line of credit against my house without my knowledge. The paperwork showed my forged signature, dated just 2 weeks before I'd found his notebook. If I hadn't discovered his scheme when I did, he would have been able to borrow against my home's value, potentially putting my house at risk. He was escalating, Linda explained when we brought her this new evidence. The longer these schemes go on, the bolder the perpetrators become. He was probably planning to drain that line of credit quickly. Maybe claim it was for your care or home improvements. The thought of how close I'd come to losing my home, the house where David and I had built our life together, still makes me feel sick. But there were also moments of unexpected strength and clarity. When Tyler's lawyer tried to depose me, attempting to prove I was mentally incompetent, I found myself articulating the timeline of his deception with perfect clarity. I remembered every conversation, every red flag I'd ignored, every moment when my instincts had told me something was wrong. "Mrs. Thompson," the lawyer said during the deposition, "isn't it true that you were often confused about financial matters during the months following your husband's death?" "I was grieving," I replied firmly. Grief and confusion are not the same thing. I was sad, overwhelmed, and trusting. I was not mentally incompetent, and the fact that I discovered your client's scheme documented it, and took action to stop it proves that my cognitive abilities were intact throughout this entire ordeal. That was the moment I knew I was going to be okay. The moment I realized that Tyler's biggest mistake had been underestimating my intelligence and resilience. The criminal trial brought some measure of justice, but it also brought unexpected pain. Sitting in that courtroom, listening to prosecutors describe Tyler's crimes, watching him in an orange jumpsuit with his hands shackled, it was devastating in ways I hadn't anticipated. This was still my son. The baby I'd nursed, the toddler who'd called me his best friend, the teenager I'd worried about and been proud of. Somewhere along the way, that little boy had become a man capable of coldly calculating how to exploit his own mother's grief for financial gain. Tyler's wife, Jessica, divorced him before the trial even began. She claimed she'd had no idea about the extent of his planning, though prosecutors suspected she knew more than she admitted. She moved back to her parents' house with their 2 young children, my grandchildren, whom I might never see again because of Tyler's choices. That loss, the loss of my grandchildren, might be the most painful consequence of all. Tyler stole my money, but his actions also stole my relationship with Emma and Jack, ages 7 and 5. They're innocent victims in this situation, but Jessica won't allow me to have any contact with them. She's afraid I'll try to turn them against their father, though all I want is to maintain the loving relationship we had before everything fell apart. Ashley has been my anchor through all of this. She eventually moved back to Ohio permanently, taking a job at a Seattle company's Columbus office so she could be closer to me. Not because she thinks I need constant supervision, but because we both realized how precious family relationships are when they're genuine and healthy. "I don't want to live 3,000 miles away from you anymore," she told me. Tyler's actions reminded me that life is unpredictable, and I want to spend more time with the people I love while I can. We've grown closer than we've ever been. Ashley helps me with financial decisions when I ask for her input, but she's careful never to take over or make me feel incompetent. She's shown me what healthy family support looks like. It's collaborative, respectful, and always preserves the other person's autonomy and dignity. I've also found unexpected community among other survivors of elder abuse. Linda connected me with a support group, and I was amazed to learn how common these crimes are. Other women shared stories remarkably similar to mine: adult children who exploited their parents' trust, spouses who stole from their partners, caregivers who systematically drained the accounts of the people they were supposed to protect. "The hardest part isn't the money," said Margaret, a 72-year-old woman whose daughter had stolen her retirement savings. "The hardest part is accepting that someone you loved and trusted could look at your vulnerability as an opportunity." That perfectly captured what I'd been struggling to articulate. Tyler hadn't just stolen money. He'd stolen my faith in my own judgment and my ability to trust family relationships. But I've been working to rebuild that trust, carefully and with clear boundaries. I've reconnected with old friends from school, joined a book club at the library, and even started volunteering with a literacy program. Each positive interaction helps restore my confidence in my ability to read people and situations accurately. I've also become an advocate for elder abuse awareness. I speak at community centers and senior groups about the warning signs I missed and the importance of maintaining independence even when family members offer help. It's painful to tell my story over and over, but if it prevents even one person from going through what I experienced, it's worth it. Trust your instincts, I tell these audiences. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let anyone, even family members, make you feel guilty for wanting to understand your own financial situation. And remember, loving support empowers you to make your own decisions. It doesn't make decisions for you. Today, I'm financially stable and emotionally stronger than I've been in years. I've learned to manage my investments with help from a new financial advisor Ashley and I carefully vetted together. I've returned to substitute teaching, which gives me purpose and reminds me daily that I'm still competent and valuable. My house, the home Tyler tried to steal, has become my sanctuary again. I've redecorated David's old office and turned it into a reading room filled with books and plants. I tend the garden David used to care for, and I've planted new flowers that bloom in different seasons, a reminder that growth and beauty can emerge from even the darkest periods. I still grieve David every day, but that grief is clean now, unmarked by the manipulation and confusion Tyler created. I can remember my husband with pure love, without the complicated feelings Tyler's actions had attached to my loss. As for Tyler, I honestly don't know how I feel about him anymore. I'm not consumed with anger. That would give him too much power over my emotional life. But I'm not ready to forgive either. Maybe someday I'll be able to separate the son I loved from the man who betrayed me so thoroughly. Maybe someday I'll be able to have some kind of relationship with him again. But that day isn't today, and it might never come. What I've learned is that family relationships, like trust, have to be earned and maintained through consistent, respectful behavior. Being someone's mother doesn't make me obligated to accept abuse from them. Being someone's child doesn't entitle them to exploit my love and trust. I've also learned that I'm much stronger and more resilient than I gave myself credit for. Grief made me vulnerable, but it didn't make me weak. The same love that made me trust Tyler's lies also gave me the strength to fight back when I discovered the truth. Standing in my garden this morning, watching the new flowers I planted bloom in the spring sunshine, I realized something important. Tyler tried to steal my future, but he failed. I have years ahead of me to continue growing, learning, and building relationships with people who truly value and respect me. I'm 69 years old now, and I'm not done living. I'm not done learning. And I'm definitely not done being the strong, independent woman David fell in love with 40 years ago. Trust, I've learned, isn't something you give blindly, even to family. It's something that's earned through consistent actions that match loving words. And most importantly, trust in yourself, in your instincts, your intelligence, and your worth is the most valuable thing you can protect. Tyler taught me that lesson in the cruelest way possible, but I'm grateful to have learned it while I still have time to apply it. In trying to steal my independence, he ultimately gave me the greatest gift of all, absolute certainty in my own strength and value, and that's something no one can ever take away from me again.